Hi, Meredith. Can you hear us okay?
I can. Can you hear me?
It's a touch quiet. Let me try to do a little adjust and have you say something in just a second.
Okay.
Say something again.
Good afternoon. Can you hear me?
Try again.
Hello, Meridian.
Oh, that's
Nice to
better.
see
I got
you.
it.
Okay.
All right. Hi, everybody. This is going to be a longer meeting today, so we will get started. The Meridian Arts Commission's mission is to develop, advance, and nurture all facets of the arts to enhance the quality of life for Meridian residents and its visitors. Today is May 8th, 2025, and it is 3:33. Let's do roll call really quick. Lizzie Taylor. Bridget King. She join us? She might, yeah, she's not here. Sean Muscolo. I don't see her either. Breckenbird, I'm here. Crystal Paulson, not here. Patrick O'Leary.
Not here.
I'm gonna mark you here. Okay. Bobby Gatan.
I am here.
Okay. Sayun Song. I don't
I'm
see.
here.
Oh, great. Okay, Sayun's here. And Jay Smith. I saw him online. Hey, Jay.
Hello, I am here.
Right. Perfect. We'll move on to the adoption of the agenda. I am going to make an amendment to the agenda. I think because we want to leave enough time for these really cool presentations, we're going to move item 4, which will be reviewing the traffic box art for the West Ada School District Show Awards. We're going to move item 4 to before the presentation, so before item 2. Do we have a motion to adopt the agenda with that amendment? I can't hear you, Lizzie. You need to move your microphone down.
Madam Chair, I so move to adopt with the amendment that you made.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
Madam Chair, I'll second.
All right, Patrick seconds. All in favor?
Aye.
All right, and any opposed? All right, so we have adopted the agenda. Let's move on to approve the minutes from last meeting, April 10th, 2025. Do we have a motion to approve those minutes?
Madam Go ahead.
Chair, this is Bobby. I moved to approve the meeting minutes from last meeting.
Okay, great. Bobby Gatan moves. Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, Lizzie Taylor seconds. All in favor?
Aye.
All right, any opposed? All right, then let's move on. And Cassandra is going to walk us through these West Ada School District traffic box proposals.
Madam Chair and Commissioners, as many of you know who've been on the commission for a few years, our traffic box program is one of the most popular programs that we have in the city, and the Arts Commission goes to the West Ada School District Show and makes recommendations for award winners, which they gave out, and then those award winners and the mayor's award get put forth for traffic box recommendation. So I'll go through those. Here's Amelia Reese, Beautiful Stars. She is a second grade elementary student. Levi Nielsen, Sockeye Salmon Swimming. He's fifth grade. And you might remember the toucan that we had last year. This is actually the same student. And while it might be nice to have different students each time, this one, I think the Arts Commission and myself, actually, I try not to put my opinion in, but this one is really vibrant and probably great for a traffic box. Sadia Hasham, she's a seventh grade student at Idaho Fine Arts Academy. Emily Sloan. The title on this one's kind of interesting. It looks a little weird, but it's like Miscellanea, except it's a self-portrait. So it's me, Selenia. She's a 12th grade student, and that's mixed media. If you go upstairs and check it out, that's an actual like record player and some fabrics and different things that are collaged in there. And this one is actually a photograph by a student at Rocky Mountain High School titled Shoot. This one is a painting by a fifth grade student, Michaela Kuhn. She and her family moved here kind of recently, and this one's the Mayor's Choice Award. So with that brief introduction, looking for a recommendation for the Arts Commission on whether or not these should become traffic boxes.
Madam Chair, Cassandra, Commissioners, I see no reason that they shouldn't. They're all fabulous.
All right, Lizzie recommends. Do we have a second? Do we need a second to recommend? No, we just vote. Oh, we need a second. Okay. Yeah. Does anyone second?
Madam Chair, I'll second.
Great. Patrick O'Leary seconds, and all in favor? Aye. Okay. I think any opposed? Sorry. All right, I think we can recommend those pieces to become traffic box art. Thank you so much, everyone. Okay, now without further ado, let's move on to our main event in this meeting, which is going to be the kickoff for the Meridian Public Art Master Plan. So we're gonna be seeing a presentation given by Meredith McKinley and Erica Fiola from VIA, who we're partnering with to create this master plan. So we're very excited to hear from them. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. It's nice to see you all. And I'm looking forward to seeing you all in about a month and a half. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. I guess, first of all, I'm Meredith McKinley. I'm with VIA Partnership. And Erica, why don't you just introduce yourself really quickly?
Sure. Hi, good afternoon. Erica Fiola, and I'll be working on this master plan and excited to get started.
Great. All right. Now we just need to do this correctly. We make sure. All right. Can you see this full screen? Yeah. Okay. Yes. Okay. Good. It's you know, you just never know. So what we're going to do today is we're going to talk a little bit about our the public art program overview that we conducted back in 2020 and the goals and outcomes from that process. And then we'll tell you a little bit about the planning process that we're engaged in right now, where we are with that, some of the community engagement that we've been working on with Cassandra. And then we'd like to set up an opportunity to have a little bit of a discussion. And this will be a little bit of a teaser for some future conversations we hope to be able to have with you on our visit. So again, we're VIA Partnership. VIA is a public art consulting group. I'm based in St. Louis. Eric and I are actually based in St. Louis. We also have some team members based in New York. But we work all over the country to work with communities to develop public art plans and strategies, as well as to commission artwork. And these are just some examples of projects that we've helped to commission. Some of which also grew out of plans that we worked with our clients on. And so we're excited. This is sort of what we live and breathe every day as public art. So we're excited to work with you. And I don't know if anybody here was part of the process, but we worked with the city of Meridian in 2020. We were supposed to come in 2020 and visit, and then of course that trip got canceled, but we did some work with you all virtually to put together some initial strategies for the public art program. And so we're going to be building on that as part of this process. We thought it'd be helpful, and Cassandra, or actually we'll just go ahead and do this overview. So just for context, and I think all of you have touched the public art program in some way, shape, or form, but the program is funded through the MAPS ordinance, which dedicates 50 cents per resident annually to fund public art in Meridian, and that's been in place since 2015. And you've been busy. So in that 10 years, there are over 100 pieces of public artwork that have been installed. Many of those are the traffic boxes, but also murals, transit shelter work, and sculptural installations. And there's also some partnerships, including with the Parks and Recreation Department, Meridian Development Corporation, and others to also support public art. So we're going to be looking at this sort of the totality of public art program as part of our planning process. So when we were working with you all in 2020, we called it a program review. It wasn't a full public art master plan. It was limited in scope. But we did do a community questionnaire. I thought we had a pretty good response to that. We did some stakeholder interviews, and we did a virtual workshop with this group, with the Meridian Arts Commission, and put together a set of recommendations. And if you haven't seen that recently, I think Cassandra may have shared it, but we'd be happy to share that with you. But it includes a vision for the program, 3 key strategies, as well as some implementation strategies, which I believe you all have been sort of working from for the past few years in terms of some of the commissioning processes, and as well as some recommendations around funding. So now we're engaged in really developing a full public art master plan. And so I always like to kind of start with like, well, why? Why are we doing a master plan? What do we need it for? What does it accomplish? And, I think the easiest way to break that down is that a good public art master plan answers the who, what, where, when, and why of your public art initiative. So, that why becomes your vision and your goals. And so one of the key questions that we're going to be asking tonight, and we're going to be asking through the community engagement, is really about that answering that why question. What can public art bring to the experience of living and working and visiting Meridian? What impact does it have on the broader community? These are important questions to ask, not just to sort of justify the existence of the public art program, which it does, but also because it gives your program some focus. And every community we work in answers this question a little bit differently. And so we want to make sure that vision reflects the kind of program you want to be building, or continue to build in Meridian. That sort of next chunk of questions is that where, what, and when. And I think of this as sort of your program plan. So this is really your opportunities for art or programs that you're going to be creating to sort of support your public art program. So the important questions there are: where are the most important places for art? What are the goals for art at those locations? So not picking the art necessarily, but saying, if we're going to be putting a work of art here, it should be a gateway, or it should be something that's interactive, or it should be something that engages families. So what does the art try to accomplish at those specific locations? And then the when is really gets into prioritization. And sometimes prioritization can be, pure prioritization. This is more important than that. And sometimes it's tied to sort of external factors, like we have a construction project happening here, and that makes it a good time to be doing art at that location, or some other sort of external factor. And then finally, the how and the who. And I sort of think of these as the technical, or sometimes I call them the administrative recommendations. So this is really like how we're going to get it done. So how are they going to be commissioned and acquired? So we'll be looking at your commissioning process. How are things funded? We'll be looking at your sort of projected funding over the next few years, and to sort of see how that aligns. Maybe there's some opportunities for other kinds of funding sources or partnerships. How is the artwork cared for over time? So making sure you've got good procedures in place for the care of the collection, the conservation and maintenance of the collection, and then who. So that gets into looking at making sure there's sort of some clarity around roles and responsibilities for the Arts Commission, for staff, for other stakeholders, how decisions are made, and again, the partnership opportunities. So we'll be looking for those opportunities as well. Our process is pretty straightforward. We've been doing some research and analysis. We're going to be moving into community outreach and engagement, which we'll talk about in a second. And then once we have that engagement and that research and analysis, we do synthesis and start putting the planning together. And then we'll move into plan development and approval. And your involvement is really important. And so we want to make sure that we're touching base with this group regularly to get feedback as we're moving through the process, and formulating recommendations. So we put this together just to sort of, we thought you might be curious about what your role is. Again, sort of helping us get a good understanding of the cultural and arts ecosystem in Meridian, advising us on perceptions of public art in Meridian. So how have you seen people interact with the collection? What are perceptions that you have of public art in Meridian? Also, helping us make connections. So as we're trying to engage with different stakeholders and stakeholder groups, are there specific people that you think we need to be meeting with? And then, of course, the feedback on plan development. And then, of course, being an advocate for the plan and the program once the plan is complete. This is, roughly shows our timeline. We want to make sure that we're taking time to do the engagement and to do things right. So we've allocated a nice amount of time for engagement. We'll be starting that this month, and we'll share a little bit with you on how that's going to happen, with the goal of having a plan adopted by in the first quarter of next year. So in terms of engagement, one of the first things we're going to be doing is, I call it a questionnaire. It's a survey. We sometimes use the term survey. It's not a statistically significant survey. We're not going to sort of try to get that sort of demographic cross section very scientifically across the community. It really is a questionnaire. We're looking for opinions, and but the more people we can get, the better. It will live online, but we're also going to do some pop-ups, which we'll talk about in a minute. So after this meeting, Cassandra will share with you a link to the beta test for the questionnaire, which we're going to ask you to review, to sort of click through it to make sure it works properly. And if you have any sort of thoughts or feedback before we launch that, with the goal of having that launch later this month. And then we're going to do a series of pop-up engagements. So we're having this is a pop-up we did in Las Cruces, New Mexico a few years ago. But we're going to have some boards prepared. And it'll in some ways mirror some of the questions in the survey, but it'll be more interactive. And we're going to be launching that at the art fair in June. And then we'll have sort of a kit for you, so that if there are future events happening over the summer, the boards can be brought out with instructions on sort of how to engage people in that. And these are questions that really help us gauge the kinds of art that people think would be successful in Meridian, the goals for art, that sort of vision. And also places, what are going to be some of the most important places for art in the community. And then later this year, date TBD, we'd also like to do a workshop. So I'll come back and we have a fun interactive workshop we call Imagine Art Here, that can engage a variety of stakeholders in a conversation about public art. This gives people an opportunity to have discussion, to maybe not look at the whole city, but look at sort of geographic, sort of break the city up geographically so that it can really focus in and think about project ideas, locations, partnerships, and ways that we can sort of incorporate those big ideas into the planning process. So we'll talk about that and start planning that on my visit in June. So before we get into the next part, any questions about the plan or the planning process?
I
Okay.
think we're looking like we're good.
Okay, so far so good. Okay.
Yeah,
Well,
so far so good. Thank you.
okay. Okay. So what Eric and I'd like to do is I'm going to share just some images of public art projects from around the country, and these are by no means our suggestions of the kinds of artwork that you all should be commissioning, but just a way to sort of seed a conversation about the kinds of things that you all would like to see in the coming 5 to 10 years in Meridian. So first, we thought we would start with the vision that we worked with you all on in 2020. So this again was informed by the community engagement and the workshop that we did at that time. And that vision was that public art in Meridian builds and strengthens the city's unique identity. In the region, it develops Meridian as a creative city, and it makes public spaces more active and attractive. So those sort of three pillars that are underlined there: identity, that idea of a creative city, and making the city more active and attractive. So sort of breaking that down a little bit further, we thought we would sort of just talk a little bit about how other communities are doing that. And the first idea of how can public art activate community spaces. So, first we start to think about artwork that is actually, designed to be interacted with, right? So that sort of invites that activity around it. This is a piece I've actually had a chance to visit. It's in Baltimore, and it's designed for not just kids, as you see here, but adults as well, to sort of interact with it, both physically as well as it creates sort of an echoing sound, and it's in a small urban park. This is actually a piece that Erica and I probably drive by on the regular. This is in Forest Park in St. Louis, and it's another great interactive piece. And I like that being a mom, I like that idea of informal creative play. So many times it's very sort of prescripted, and sculptures like this that can kind of invite imagination and imaginative play. And also just sort of, physical interaction. Or just providing interactive experiences where people gather. So, if you're going to be creating a bench or a picnic table or a shade structure or something like that, can it be creative and fun and invite people in to interact with it in a way that beyond just maybe your typical picnic shelter? So we moving along, ideas of identity and community identity, and what does that mean? And I think that's going to be a big part of the conversation, especially at the Imagine Art here. We'd really like to dig into that idea of Meridian's identity and how can public art, or should public art, sort of be capturing that identity, or what does it say about who Meridian is today, the past, the present, the future. So, sometimes communities do this by celebrating historic forms, but they might do that through a more contemporary lens, like this project by David Fruin, which is, taking this sort of iconic windmill, but making it very sort of contemporary using the stained glass. Showcasing the history and heritage of the community. This is just a very sweet project. It's actually on a shelter in a park in Johnson County, Kansas. And the parkland was donated by the Verhaeg family. And so they wanted to honor that history of the land as a farm. And so they commissioned an artist to do this mural on the picnic shelter. You know, and one other aspect. So like one of the things I was thinking about was just the, you know, unique landscape and ecology. Is that something that you highlight through your public art, or how do you bring that forward in your public art? So there are all kinds of things that I think we can really dig into around that. Creating focal points was something that came up in 2020 quite a bit. And so there are lots of different ways of thinking about that. Some may be very literal, like having an artist design, you know, a gateway that really sort of says, you are here, let people know they've arrived. But do it in a really, you know, with some flair. Um, this is a very iconic landmark. This is David Dahlquist, and I believe this is in Nebraska, but you know, it's again sort of, um, you know, in this sort of very flat landscape, creating some verticality, playing with that verticality. In this case, it's a mosaic, so it's got this like very sort of beautiful texture to it. You know, or creating projects that are more intimate and that sort of anchor places where people are gathering. And this is in Dallas. I've visited this piece recently as well, and it's at a shopping center, so it's on commercial property, but in an area where they were trying to activate the space as, you know, an open lawn for lawn games and outdoor dining and things like that. So creating a piece that can kind of like gather in all the space around it, you know. Some communities are very interested in public art purely as a design enhancement. Now, so how can we make our community more beautiful or enhance the design of public spaces through art? So that might mean, again, looking at functional elements. This is at Lomar Sculpture Park, also in St. Louis, taking a very traditional pavilion and making it a sculpture. We're just looking at ways, again, to bring color or texture into public spaces. Something that, you know, could have been just another concrete retaining wall is now this beautiful mosaic. Thinking about interior spaces as well, I think a lot of the examples we've shown have been outdoors, but you have a lot of public and civic buildings as well. You know, how do you create something that's welcoming and unique within libraries, community centers, and other kinds of public spaces? And then finally, you know, one of the ideas that came out in 2020 was this idea of the creative city. So how can a public art program nurture creativity in the community? I think actually your electrical box program has done that quite successfully, as well as your gallery and a lot of the other things that you're doing. You know, and there are other ways to think about nurturing creativity. And one is just bringing art into everyday spaces. So thinking about, you know, the next time you go to the park or you go to play basketball, that there's art there is a way to nurture, you know, creativity throughout the community. Providing opportunities for artists that are new to public art. And, you know, this is a kind of conversation that we have a lot in our office, is that a lot of times, you know, it's the same artists that get commissioned over and over again for public art projects because they're very complicated. They require having a lot of insurance and signing big contracts and being able to work with fabricators and installers. And so there's oftentimes not a lot of entry points for artists that are new to public art. And so crafting projects, and this is just a really simple and beautiful billboard project along a trail in North Carolina, but creates an opportunity for artists who maybe artists who aren't sculptors but work two-dimensionally, like your electrical boxes, again, to create work for public spaces. And then I always think about hands-on opportunities, right? So, you know, what kinds of projects can be created where the community can actually get involved in the art making process itself. And this is an artist, Gigi Miller, I've been able to work with. And she does these fun tile making workshops as part of her process. And then those tiles can get embedded into these, you know, fun and sort of playful sculptural pieces that she makes. And then, you know, families can come back over the years and see their tile that they got to make. Or what the project she's working with me on right now is for an animal shelter. And so she actually had people who adopted animals make, you know, paw print tiles, and then the paw prints get put in the, so I'm very excited about that. I think it's going to be very sweet. So I'm going to stop sharing the art and we're going to go to questions. And I'm going to ask you all, I think it's probably with the hybrid, it might be a little hard for us to sort of see who wants to talk or things like that. So if you can help us sort of facilitate the Q&A. But the first question is, looking at the sort of the vision and the strategies from 2020, and we'll have it again, like we'll have more time to talk about this, but just wanted to sort of get your initial reaction to this vision and strategies. And do they still resonate? Are there things that are missing? Are there things in there now that just don't feel like they belong? So that's the first question. I'll stop talking and let you all chime in.
All right. Does anybody have anything to say about that? How did they? Oh, Bobby, go for it.
No, I think they still, hi Meredith, Erica.
Hi.
This is Bobby. I still do think all of those are excellent and still relevant and are all kind of on board with what we'd like to see in Meridian. We have some, some really nice upcoming projects that we want to build on, and those are all very good examples that you've shared.
Yeah, I definitely agree with Bobby. I think a lot of that is things we've discussed in the past, and yeah, some things we maybe haven't done, more interactive things, and yeah, I think placemaking is really important. Anybody have anything?
Just something real quick to follow up. And so Meridian is obviously a very growing city that you've kind of learned that we've been developing them really quickly. And should there be any educational component to educating our public, our citizens, our people here to kind of understand a little more on like what to expect? Or a lot of this stuff is really cool and modern and contemporary and just different, but should there be any type of educational component to educate our audience, our public, or art for all and everyone is good and should be good with it? I don't know if that makes sense.
Are you thinking educating people about artwork so that they feel like they've got an entry point to the work itself? Or like we're working right now in a community where there's just an interest in having more information accessible about the artwork so that people can learn about it when they go to a park. So having maybe a good sign or having a QR code to the website, um, or even like you could have like a curriculum, about an artwork that could be shared with teachers. Or I guess what would talk a little bit more about what you think the educational component, like what it would
Something,
what it
yeah,
would be
something
serving.
along
Yeah.
those lines. I think, I think definitely having something online just to
Mhm.
elaborate or explain a little more about the art. A lot of times, an artwork comes up and shows up and they might not really understand why or who or what. And so just having that little bit of, component, whether it be online or a plaque.
Mhm.
And I think we have something like that going on already, but just wondering if that's something that you see in other cities. And
I do. I think sometimes, I mean, I think it's everybody, right? With projects like this, that you get the project in and then you're so glad that it's done that you forget that you constantly have to sort of like market it and talk about it and educate people about ongoing. So it's not like you're not you finish a public art project and you're like, phew, we did that, but there is this sort of need to continuously engage people with the work. And I think that's something I see public art programs struggle with, mostly just because of resources, that there's just not enough resources allocated to that ongoing engagement, programming, education about the collection. but if that's something that's important, then that's something we should think about, sort of highlighting in the plan.
Oh, thanks, Meredith. Yeah, and I think like Bobby said, we're already kind of doing that, but yeah, continue to- I don't know if there's QR codes, but that would be kind of there's QR codes that link to the website that we have
Yeah.
set up.
Yeah, your website's
Not on
really
all of them, but
fantastic.
moving forward, yes.
Right,
Moving
you probably have to
forward,
go
okay.
back and yeah,
Okay.
and adding those in. But the website's very, I mean, it's been great for us being remote
Right.
to learn about your collection. So we've spent some time and it's really nice with the map and all of that. I think it's a really good platform. But then you got
Yeah.
to get people there, right? So that's the
Right, absolutely. And I think, yeah, we were talking about a tour of some kind, a walking tour, but we'll work on it. Anybody else, do you have something to say?
Yeah, am I on mute still? Okay. I was just wondering about what sort of creative solutions you might have come across or found. You had mentioned that sometimes it does become a small pool of artists that keep getting all of the work. And so, I think something that we have going for us is the Initial Point Gallery here that showcases a lot of local new artists that maybe haven't done a lot of public works, but I was wondering if there's any other creative solutions that you found in your travels that can encourage or I guess enable opportunity for new artists.
Well, I think one thing I would love to be able to do is maybe talk with some local or regional artists a little bit to hear from them what the sort of what the obstacles or the friction points are in terms of being able to sort of take that step into public art, or if they're even interested in that. Because I think there are, like I mentioned, having projects that are designed specifically for artists that are new to public art. um, there are tools like workshops and boot camps. There's some communities that do more intensive training programs for artists that are interested in public art, and that might be something that might be more of a regional kind of thing to look at. And for Meridian, what are the other public art programs in the region doing in terms of training, or the universities even sometimes, like you'll find that universities are sort of like art school is like notoriously bad at like training young artists to be entrepreneurs and business people, and like so even like working with local universities to what kind of professional practices programs are they doing. um so there's all different kinds of solutions, but it really, I think what we, if this is something, if it's an issue that you think you really want to dig into, I think the next step is probably to have some conversations with the artists to really, and to learn about what resources already exist too, because it would be a lot to take on, I think, just for one public art program, but that could be a really interesting partner, way to think about partnerships.
Great question, Jay. Anybody else? Do you have something to say, Lizzie?
Yes, I do. Madam Chair, and Commissioners, ladies, thank you for a very, very good, very solid presentation. The statement that I'm going to make is by no means a criticism. It is just a comment. What would have been very helpful to me and perhaps to others is the cost of the projects that you showed, because I mean, I want that flowered thing in the Carolinas for my backyard. But, and St. Louis is a different city than Meridian. So I think that just would have been kind of helpful. Okay. The second
No,
thing,
that's fair, and we can start to do that in future presentations if that's helpful. So that's good feedback. Thank you.
again, not a criticism, just a comment. I have talked at length with a lot of people in this community as an artist, and both as an artist and as a member of the Arts Commission, and people don't know what MAPS is. They just do not get it. I had a person ask me a couple of months ago, after I'd kind of explained MAPS, oh, can I give you 50 cents and you could give it to the mayor? That's not how it works. So we need a cohesive comprehensive, succinct, and clear thing to hand to people, especially some of the older, shall I say, hayseeds that live in this community. Well, I'm not going to pay for that. Might be all fine and good, but I ain't paying for that stuff. Okay, you know what I mean? Something that says how it's administered, how we know that it's 50 cents per person, how do we gauge how many new people we have, where does the money come from, where does it go? Maps, funding is the big thing. It's all fine and good, but I'm not going to pay for it, they say to me. Okay. Another thing, and this is probably a little bit cart before the horse, but that's kind of the way I am. When we do these public outreach things, I know that I'm going to do one at the senior center. That's all old people. Okay. But when we do the outreach things, I think it would be helpful to know not the specific age, but the age category of the respondents. Because
Mhm.
people who are 18 to 24 are going to respond, I think, somewhat differently than people who are 35 to 50 or people who are 65 and older. It's just demographic. We don't care how old anybody is. But if all the young people and all the old people saying we want cows, fine, let's do cows. You know what I'm saying? You know what I'm saying?
Mhm.
So that's
Yeah,
all.
we are going to collect some although we're not
Yeah.
trying to get a statistically, a statistically accurate sample of the community. We are collecting demographic information. So we will be able to, if we want to sort the responses to the online survey,
Yeah.
by demographics. And what that has me thinking, Cassandra, is for when we do these pop-up engagements, because we might just want to have a sign-in sheet or something like that to capture names of people who are coming, but also maybe we can capture a little bit of demographic info if people are willing to share that with us, just so we know who at each of the engagements who we're talking to. So yeah, that's a good thing to think about. Thank you for that.
I'll just add to build on that because Meridian is such a quickly growing community. Another question we added to the survey was around sort of length of time that they've been in Meridian, because I think that could be an interesting thing to kind of dig into as well.
True.
Hi, Meredith. This is Patrick O'Leary. As you were talking, the thought came across my mind, and especially when the question about education and the public art came up. And what I thought of was, or wondering, are there any programs oh, hi. Any programs you guys have worked with that use public art and community engagement to get the community, whether it's a prize or an event or an activity, to get them to want to go to and visit the public art objects that are within the city and the community?
Mm-hmm. That's interesting to think about. I mean, it sounds like you've been talking about doing some tours and things like that. You know, I think that's something we need to think about. Uh, and maybe talk a little bit about more. So, um, we've certainly had, artist talks and artist lectures. That's going to get you already sort of your art interested audience. And so, for me, I think of more about like, what are those sort of adjacencies? So, if it's we help manage a temporary public art exhibition program in Alexandria, Virginia. And one of the things they're really good at there actually is just having parties. I don't call them parties, but like there was a roller skating group that was interested in doing something at the park. And so, we met them at the park, and while they were there, we had them, came and talked to them about the art. So I think it's also looking for those places where there might be already sort of built-in overlap or audiences where you can start to capture that. And the thing I keep thinking about is again that sort of that commitment and that staff time and the resources to continuously sort of program and engage once the artwork is installed. So I'm sure there are lots of creative ideas that you all could come up with to do that, and it would just be a matter of sort of making the space, and finding the resources to do it.
Thanks, Meredith. Yeah, and I think things like we're going to do the Meridian Fine Art Fest. We're going to have a booth at the Meridian Fine Art Fest. We're going to have a little activity. We're also going to get a lot of information out into the public. Doing things like that, I think, is a good way to engage the public and educate. So.
Yeah. I mean, the survey itself, we included a sampling of images, public art from the maps collection. I mean, the first question was sort of, did you know that there's a public art program? And then, are you familiar with these works? I think it'll be interesting to see of the sampling of works that we selected, what people are already aware of. I mean, I think that'll be really telling, and maybe help us understand, what needs to happen to raise awareness.
I have a quick question. Are there possibly avenues or events that we could partner with other organizations such as Parks and Rec? For example, I know that at Settlers Park all throughout the summer, they have the outdoor movie nights. Possibly there's a way we could set up a tent or a table with some information about maps, but also an information about, the master plan and how to get involved in public art and, how to maybe attend some of these commission meetings as well to voice their opinions.
Do you want to talk about that, Cassandra? Yeah.
Yeah, that question should probably go to me. That's in my office. So I think there definitely are ways. And so when we get, after maybe we do that first one and see how that goes, then we can see what the appetite is to try to be at some of the other booths. One of the super easy ones would be Concerts on Broadway, because that's an Arts Commission one that I run. So
I would be willing to volunteer to do those movie nights as well and work the booth. And I know my kids love going to see those movies, so I'm there anyway.
Perfect. I think I had another set of questions. Like we've been talking so much, but want to make sure.
Just real quick, I just want to note that Bridget is online. She's been here since 3:35.
Oh, okay.
But she has to join as a panelist. Bridget, if you can hear me, I keep trying to send you a panelist invite. But if you want to be able to say anything, then you have to join as a panelist.
So we'll just maybe we'll throw these couple questions out there, and then I know you've got a lot of other things on your agenda. So, are there specific opportunities that you see for the program in the coming decade? Are important places, especially since I'm going to be there in a few weeks, that you think we want to make sure are on our radar for future public art opportunities?
I think as far as future public art opportunities, we'll be getting a presentation right after this about some good ones at the Future Community Center. I do believe there's also a new library coming up that might be a good candidate. Does anybody else have anything to add? We'll think about it.
Think
Bridget,
about that. Yeah.
Yeah. Bridget, do you have anything? Or Sayun?
No, I don't have anything right now.
Okay, thanks, Bridget.
Yeah, me neither.
I know when we were working with you all in 2020, one of the conversations was around gateways, or that sort of sense of arrival that you are in Meridian kind of artwork. So that's something, I'd certainly will be sort of thinking about as we're driving around and looking around. Parks, of course. You've got some trail systems, but it sounds like the community facilities, like community centers and libraries. Are there other types of places? No. Well, keep thinking about it. And if you have ideas, especially if there are places you want to make sure that we go and take a look at, just send a note to Cassandra and she'll pass that along or put it on our itinerary.
Yeah, we definitely will. Thanks, Meredith.
Thank you.
And parks will probably be a big one as usual. So, Yeah, should we move on?
I think that was it. So we'll see you. What are my dates, Cassandra? It's June
So Meredith will be here the last weekend in June. for the-
25th.
Let's see, it's or the
I know it's like
25th through 28th.
Makes sense. Okay.
And I would like to do a workshop with the Arts Commission, so it would be noticed as a special meeting. We probably do it over in like the conference rooms A and B over here, and do a workshop with Meredith. So I am looking at Thursday morning for that, Thursday, June 26th in the morning for that. So if you can please check your calendar and sort of reserve that, that would be good. And then on the 28th and 29th, that's the Meridian Fine Arts Festival. So you'll be able to get lots of hours in if you would like.
Great. We'll look forward to seeing you all in person.
Thank you so much, Meredith.
Thank
That was
you.
wonderful. We really appreciate it.
Oh, and maybe just to reiterate, so we have the draft of the survey. So after this meeting, probably tomorrow morning, I'll send the draft out to everyone and you can go through and take it. It won't be your official response. So when we actually release the survey, please take the actual survey. But we'll have the draft so you can give some feedback. Some of those things like, I think we had a lot of demographics on there, but we sort of thought, Meredith and I talked about it, like we didn't think we would break down the demographics by looking at like which types of races and which types of genders were responding this way or that way. But the age one, maybe we would. And so, so give us that kind of feedback if there's questions on there or an artwork that you really think should be included in the ones that people recognize or don't recognize. Please let us know those kinds of things so we can sort of finalize the survey. And I think what did we talk about for releasing it in about a month?
Yeah, I think we can get it. We want to probably get it ready to go so that it can. I'd like to have it living out there in the world for a couple weeks before the Fine Arts Festival, just to sort of see if we can get some momentum going, and we'll keep it up for a couple months. So, excellent. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
I'm going to stay and listen in, by the way. So I'll just be back here.
Please do. Yes, please do. Next, we have Stephanie Inman here. She has graced us with her presence. We're so grateful. And she's going to give us a talk about public art concepts for the future community center, which we're very excited to hear. Thank you so much.
Thank you. All right, this is so fancy up here. I have to bend down though. Okay, can you hear me? I don't know, maybe I don't even need this, but I'm wondering if I should go through this and just make sure it looks okay really quick. If you guys want to stretch for a second, because you've been talking like for 1 minute.
We could take a quick 2-minute recess.
And
Okay,
hi
yeah.
Meredith.
2-minute recess.
Would I look at
Recess,
this?
recess.
Cassandra, or would I look at? I can do the link.
Okay.
So, and then. Okay, I'm back. Hi, Commissioners. And I'm supposed to say Madam Chair. That's so fancy. Hello. My name's Stephanie Inman, and I was tasked and honored to come up with some art opportunities for the new community center. And I have a PowerPoint I put together, but there's some issues with some of the loading, so it looks a little fuzzy, and I don't like that. So I'm going to go back and forth with Cassandra to pull up the PDFs in between. So sorry. And I have a very limited time, and I have so much to say, so I'm going to go kind of fast because I can't leave. I'm going to leave some things out, but I'm going to do my best. So I'll probably talk for like 15 minutes and it's going to be fast. So just try to focus. Meredith's going to be like, oh my gosh. But I was basically hired to come up with 3 to 4 opportunities, but I'm going to show you 11. And then the idea is while we're talking about these, if you could maybe think, okay, these 3 are ones that I would really like to see. And then Cassandra will get back with you to go forward from there. And then just know that these are really sketchy. They're ideas, they're concepts. And before I start, I want to just say thank you for volunteering your time. That's wonderful that you do this for your city. That's great. Okay, so I'm going to get started. This first page, this loads just fine. So the theme was basically provided. It's a easy theme to respond to, celebrating agriculture and irrigation. The being in Settlers Park, we can really talk about the early settlers and what they had to go through because of the arid climate. And when I was reading this book, if you've read Lila Hill's book, she talks about that it was so dry that dew wouldn't even form in the morning. But I got a lot of great information about early settlers from this book. And so there's a lot to respond to for artists for different projects, I think. The strategy is collaborating with architects and Meridian staff, because I think there's ways to integrate artwork now while we're in the planning stage. And then future phased projects could be done later. The idea is to engage with local artists. It could be direct hires, or you could do requests for qualifications. Budget, the budget I was given was $100,000, 1% of construction costs. Cassandra has like a quick thing to say about that.
So budget for this hasn't actually been approved anywhere. So the budget for this, it could come, and of course, I always hope that it can come from the actual construction of the building costs. They are currently trying to cut back on that because it is over budget. It could come from maps, or it could come from a combination of the two. So budget's not confirmed yet, but we were, at this point, we're sort of envisioning 1% of the construction cost is pretty reasonable for art projects for the building. So that's $100,000 to work with for some projects.
And then the dream would be if we had a few of these realized when it is opened, right? And then other projects can come along, but we can still plan for them. And then a few other things to mention. I really love the idea of using materials like irrigation pipes, sprinklers, repurposed farm equipment to go with our theme. And no matter what, really prioritizing like durability, making sure this is really safe, and then thinking about long-term maintenance, you know, how often, what are you gonna do in 20 years? So have that in mind. And then the main thing, here's are the goals that I've come up with. The main thing I want to think about is how can we celebrate Meridian and make it unique to Meridian? Like this wouldn't be something you'd find somewhere else. You know, how can we make these references to Meridian and make people really excited about them? Like this is really special. So again, the 3 or 4 opportunities that's turned into 11. Here's the community center. We had a presentation from Garrett, and then I'm just going to skip ahead. Oops. So here's a floor plan. You should have that in front of you. And I'm really focusing on the building more than the park itself on this. And you can see these little green squares are where I've identified different opportunities and where they would be in the building. And to get started, this one's, so does this look a little fuzzy? This one right here. So if Cassandra, if you could bring up the one that says like 1-4, that file. So I'm going to show you like the first 4 ideas and then explain a couple of them in more detail. But just remember, these are sketches. You have to use your imagination. And then I'll go to the next group. But the very first thing, the architects identified this spot in the front and the back of the building, so at the main west entry and then the east entry, to do a large mural. And I love that they did that. So we're going to talk about that. And I have basically 3 things for you to think about just with that. And but I think it really sets the tone. It's super important. It'd be great if this one could be done at opening. The second thing is a lobby wall. So that's when you first enter and it's on the left. I thought that would be a fun place to talk about the arid landscape. And I'm thinking now like maybe it's something like this panel system that I have on here, but it talks about jackrabbits. They had, once the early settlers got going, they had tons and tons of jackrabbits. It was a big problem. Then they had grasshoppers. Anyway, there's so many things to respond to, and maybe there's irrigation maps. And I thought it could be like watery, maybe abstracted acrylic pieces in here, for example. You can see on the right, Cassandra, I don't know if you can zoom out, but, or what you guys see on there. Oh, never mind. I'll get to that when I talk about the next thing. Okay, so then the third item, I call it the lounge wall. The architects call this the lounge, but I'm thinking a historic photo collage mural would be really great there. And I'll show you an example, and then I'll show you kind of a sketch for that one. And then number 4 is ceiling art, and I'll kind of talk about that more in a little bit. So next thing, I don't know if I can press, if we can go to the next slide. I think these are maybe okay, Cassandra, on the PowerPoint. There were some problems with linking the file on some of the pages. So, okay, here we go. So what I'm calling the welcome mural, these could be painted, right? They could be on both sides. So on the budget, I have a big range, and the lower range is if it's painted. But there's going to be a lot of west sun on this first main entry. Plus, painted murals don't last that long. Like, I'm thinking, my guess is like 8 years or 10 years. So I want you to also consider some other materials when you're thinking about this and giving feedback. If you go to the next slide, Cassandra, or maybe I can do it from here, I'm not sure. Oh, so go back. Oh, yeah, that is right. Another idea I had, instead of one big spot, is if we did like a triptych and it's inset in the stone. So think about material choices. 4x8 panels are really easy to get. What if we did 6 3x8 panels, whatever those might be? So you hire an artist and they could paint or whatever on that in their studio, bring it and install it, or they could do it on site. But the architects, I showed some other ideas, but we all really like this kind of inset triptych look here. But I want you to also consider, instead of just paint, is we could do porcelain enamel. And if you're familiar with that, it's fired. They guarantee it. I'm doing a project right now with the city of Boise for Grove Street, but they say it'll last 25 years is what they guarantee, but it'll probably be like 30. And it's expensive and you kind of have to work with it, but they use vector files. So that could be a good way to also bring a young artist in. You know, you could open up the opportunity with that. And then to bring costs down, they can do 12 by 12 tiles. So that's what this example is here. If you see this is like a big installation. So it's a way of getting something really durable and colorful out there. You have to think about it with them. You have to work with them back and forth with the files. But so that's an option I just want you to think about. And we're still on number 1. And then this I'm just throwing in here in the middle, not to confuse you, but this is another idea I think would be fun, whether it's on the outside or on the inside of the building, where you hire an artist to make a coloring book page, like a black and white page that incorporates whatever, maybe from the surveys or what's important to Meridian. And then you have the community come in, maybe it's all printed out and color in there. So it's a community engagement piece, and then you reproduce it in different ways, be it inside or outside the building. Okay, not totally related. Now I'm back to number 1 again. And this is a third option to consider. So paint or those porcelain enamel tiles. Cassandra sent me this example, and it's beautiful, of like a steel cutout design applied. So this is another thing to consider. Costs would be more, different people would be hired to do this kind of a thing. Okay, moving on. Number 2.
So I want to pause there just for a second.
Yeah.
To kind of make sure because I want to be clear about what kind of feedback we want. This one of all the projects, this is almost definitely going to happen. And then I think the rest of them are probably like a menu of options. So this one with the welcome mural, though, we're really looking at we'd like to know what the commission, do you respond more to the steel cutout sort of ones, which would longevity wise last a really long time, sort of one look. Potentially the porcelain enamel as an option, or more of like a painted mural. So just hold that thought in your head to the end, but I just want to emphasize that's one question we want to ask.
Yeah, that sounds good. I know I'm going to be talking about a lot of things too, so, and fast. Okay, moving on. Number 2, when you first walk in on the left, that's where I was talking about. There's an opportunity to talk about the arid landscape in kind of more of an abstracted way to tell the story. So this I just mocked up. Again, it's sketchy. On the right, there's some different materials that I thought were kind of exciting. It could be monochromatic. It could be different materials, or it could be, like I said, something kind of watercolory on acrylic and dimensional. I have a green wall behind here. I've talked to the architects quite a bit, but this is an idea of mine to bring in green. And I think it's on the next slide. I kind of tell you why. We independently, when I was talking to them, talked about the Meridian colors. A different way to incorporate wayfinding is on these side entries, like one entry's play and it's blue, for example, and the other entry's yellow and it's learn, maybe. Well, it makes sense to me that when these two things come together, yellow and blue make green. So that's why I'm playing with green in this whole area here. Okay. The next thing is number 3. Now, this is an example of what I would call a photo collage that I did for the Irma Hayman House in Boise. And this was a temporary installation for like a year and a half. And it told the story of the neighborhood. And there were photographs of early immigrants. There's my handwriting. There's wallpaper samples we found in the closets. There's photographs. There's Irma and other people in the neighborhood. And then there's these little plaques that tell the story. So that kind of just gives you an idea of when I'm saying photo collage, an example. And if we go to the next slide, this is a sketch. I don't know how that one's looking, how that one loads. But so when you're in the community center on this right hand, again, this is rough, okay? Those aren't even Meridian people. I just put them there, okay? But the idea is having a graphic designer or an artist work with a historian. And I talked to Barbara Perry Bauer, who owns TAG, and got some pricing from her. But I think she would be a great person to source and work with the artist and come up with historical photographs and things, and then work on the interpretive panel on the right. That's what that rectangle on the right is supposed to be. So that would describe, oh, here's what's going on with that other part. Here's why we use this collage this way. Here's why, different things are done in this whole area. So hopefully that makes sense, but I think that could be really a lovely way to tell the story about Meridian and its history. And then this installation idea is another one the architects really liked. And this one would be a grasshopper mobile. So if you look at the one on the upper left, kind of more of a horizontal, but they're using these sound dampening ceiling tiles that are kind of like this thick felt. And in the meeting, they had these samples and they were cut up. And I thought, super interesting. And so you could kind of take that material, use some inspiration, these grasshoppers that were, would be on the ceiling. And then I thought you could take the grasshoppers again and use them throughout the building. So it'd be almost like a little scavenger hunt. You would just find these little felted grasshoppers. Cassandra said, oh, maybe this could also be the communities putting them together. And by the way, grasshoppers are also considered to be a symbol of good luck, just FYI. Let's see, so that's the first 4. So Cassandra, can you bring the one that's the PDF that says 5 to 8? That would be great. So the next 5, I'll just start talking about number 5. This is one I'm super excited about. And so while we have some big moments, there's some little inexpensive ones too. And this one is a little inexpensive one that I really want to do personally, like make it, because I love miniatures. Can you find that one, Cassandra? Okay, it says 5 through 8, if that helps. So the architects are like, this would be super easy. So basically they would identify, I don't want to add any money to the budget, but they would like add 2 windows in the building. And they said there's so many different spots where we could do that. So then I'm not explaining this right, but the idea is very easy. So kids walk by this little window and you look in and you're like, what's in there? And it's a diorama that's made just for the community center. And so maybe it's mice and they're in the kitchen demo or whatever, or it's some little people sitting under the oak tree at Settlers Park, or I don't know, camping, or could be, and then you could change it and celebrate like the 4th of July, make little banners and stuff. So it's just like a fun little delightful thing to find in the community center. And I'll show you an example of kind of something similar. Number 6 is just recognizing that in the reception area, there's 2 great walls where we could have 2 pieces of artwork by Meridian artists. And it wouldn't be hard to have, it's kind of, I think, a 4x4, kind of big. So it could be any type of artwork that could go in there. And maybe you guys or Cassandra could figure out who that is, if it's commissioned or if you buy pieces from a local artist. 7 is an idea for, and these are on your printouts too. There's an opportunity, I think, for an entry sculpture, and that would have to work with that mural or whatever is at the entry. And then 8 is an idea that would have to be integrated in construction, and these are stainless steel oak leaves that you would put in the concrete. I have some pricing on that, and that is a tie-in again to the park, to that big oak tree in the park. So then going in a little bit more detail next, there's an example of that diorama, if you can see that one, Cassandra. And thanks for being the assistant on that. But the example I'm going to show you is it's a Boston bookstore, and there was this local author did a story about this squirrel named Paige or something. And this guy did this little environment where Paige would live in. So it was a nice tie-in to a local author. So if you have any ideas, that would be great. Some local Meridian author or story. Cassandra, that one might look, oh, there he is. So diorama, easy, fun, simple. What do we have next? So this is just really rough, but showing you, here's the reception area. You know, the architects gave me just some quick perspectives, but just how, if something 4x4 would look behind their desk. And then if you look, you know, that wall on the right, that is what we called or that's number 2, if you want to remember kind of where you're at on the plan. Okay, the next few, number 9, I'm calling a tactile wall, but this, it doesn't have to be a grasshopper, but there's another spot in that main entry, in the main lobby, I think, where you could do a really fun piece where you could touch it and use recycled materials like sprinkler heads, maybe it's artificial turf, maybe more of that felt from the ceiling, and have something that you could really touch and play with and turn. And maybe there's a sound element, but you can learn more about farming and sustainability there. And I'll show you a perspective in a little bit just to kind of give you an idea of like the scale of that one. And then number 10 is an idea that's inexpensive and easy and fun, and maybe this could be part of the sign package instead, but the idea of making an interchangeable gallery and hallways. So like 2 plexiglass pieces with standoffs. People who teach art could have, you know, classroom art there. You could have maybe photographs from the kitchen or someone doing yoga or whatever you want to showcase, and then change it out. So it's really like a community gallery in different spots in the hallways. Number 11 is this idea about like a large scale affirmation in the gym. And this goes back to Meredith's presentation a little bit too, but a community engagement piece where you invite the community, and maybe it's everyone's painting or making these clay hearts, or maybe they're made out of wood or acrylic or whatever, painting them all yellow. And maybe that's one of the community center teachers, maybe that's a sign maker, whatever, but then installing this big affirmative message that says you've got heart, kid. So it's all these hearts in the Meridian yellow color on the wall. Okay, so let's go to the next one, Cassandra, just to show you the tactile wall idea. Again, this is the green. So that's where that would live. And then on the right that's where the photo collage idea is, on that far wall there. And then that, just so you know, that window to the left is looking into the gym. And then the next slide shows you just really basic how this community hallway gallery could be. And you know, depending on sizes, if you want it sketchbook size or 11x17 or whatever it might be, but I think that could be a really fun, inexpensive addition. And here's an AI version of a community engagement, which isn't that great, but you get the idea, right, of making this installation with all these little hearts. Okay, I went through them all. I don't know how, I tried to go as fast as I can, but there's so many other ideas that you could do and phase, but this is a start to get your feedback and see what you think. But I really like emphasizing the idea that arts that's unique to Meridian and really, you know, strengthens community. So that's where I'm at.
Quick question. What is the proposed timeline?
For the community center, I can't remember exactly, but I need to talk to the architects in June and July for construction documents. And then I think Garrett said,
The earliest possible date that it can open is October 1 of 20, I think it's 26. Yeah, October 1 of 26, which is a kind of ambitious timeline, but that's
yeah, that's very
Or-
ambitious.
yeah. And I just want to reiterate, this is probably too many projects to do all at once. So what kind of feedback we'd really like from you is, other than the first one, because I think the first one is probably the priority one, like if you could pick out three, like say we could only do three of these projects, what are your top three? Like which ones would you prioritize?
I love the hanging grasshopper one.
That's
I think
really
that's a
fun.
really unique, great idea.
Wait, who's talking?
It's Bridget, she's online.
Okay, hi. I didn't know who was talking. Thank you.
All right, yeah, do you want that feedback right now, or are you needing to go?
Whatever, no, it's all up to you guys. I was just, I had a certain amount of time and I
Oh,
was
yeah.
like trying to
No, you
go,
did
like not
great.
hold you too long because, but there's so many things to talk about.
There was a lot to talk about.
Yeah.
I think I'm excited about the mural at the front or the installation. I like the idea of having it be a more durable thing that lasts a long time if it's going to be on the front of the building. I also really I like a lot of these ideas, but I think my personal goal are things that give local artists an opportunity. So I really like your wall diorama idea. I've seen something like that, and I think that's really fun for kids. But I also like that you, a local artist, would be creating that work. I like having local artists show wall art behind the reception. And what was my other feedback? Oh yeah, and I liked that the art slash poem hallway gallery because I think we don't engage the writing poetry community as much.
Yeah, I agree. I think the poem hallway, as well as, you know, highlighting writing and some non-traditional, I guess, like visual art style things. And I think you had mentioned also having it sandwiched between a couple plexi on a standout. I think that's a really great idea for opportunity to switch those out and highlight, you know, similar to what we have here at Initial Point Gallery. You know, maybe periodically do little showings or give opportunity to younger artists for those. And then also too, my vote is, I love the dioramas. I love anything that is interactive and especially kid friendly. So I think that kind of stuff, it will really add a lot of flair and personality to it. Yeah.
Yeah, does anybody else have any feedback?
Madam Chair and assembled guests, I think they're all very, very good. The only one that I really dislike with a massive intensity is this gym messaging thing. I'm sorry, I step on people's feet, but if I don't annoy at least one person per day, I have not had a successful day. This gym messaging thing reminds me very much too much of live, laugh, and love.
All right, does anybody else?
Stephanie, Madam Chair, Commissioners, this is a great presentation. You really thought through it all, and you're the right person for this. And I'm excited for all of this. I do like the historic part of it. Anytime you can educate folks about the area, and where things and people and stuff comes from. I like that part. I do like the engagement part. Anything engaging the audience is always cool. And the welcoming and the lobby wall are kind of also pretty much the first three sound like it's something you could take advantage of, just the space and kind of hit the audience right away and make them feel welcome when you first come in. And hopefully all the other projects could come in and throughout the however time we have, but you know, overall you did a great job, so congrats.
Thank you.
Does anybody online have anything they'd like to add, Bridget or Cyan? It's okay if you don't. I just don't want to forget about you. I guess, I just have a question. Do you think, even though obviously we can't do all these projects right now, is there like a possibility that we could keep like over, you know, the years adding new projects to the community center like this?
Yes, and I think we're planning to probably try to get some things in, the welcome mural in particular, when the building is there. And then if some other projects are kind of in process, especially the ones that maybe have some community engagement, they could kind of be phased in.
I just think it's really exciting, like how much opportunity is there. So this is great. Thank you.
Yeah, great. And then I just want to mention that if you added everything up and depending on how much the welcome mural is, and you leave out the entry piece that was kind of big, I think when I added it up, it was like 85,000 for everything that I listed. So, I mean, you can do a lot with the budget. I mean, we can stretch it. So that's nice.
Oh, thank you for adding that. That's a really great thing to think about. So.
But we'll have to tell Crystal, yeah, no, love, laugh, love, live, laugh,
No,
whatever.
laugh, laugh.
Because I was purposely trying, so this says, you've got heart, kid. But yeah, so thank you for your comment though. But that's where I was trying not to do live, laugh, love. I don't know if you've seen in the bus terminal in Boise, it says keep moving people. Have you seen that? Yeah, so I did that one and it's all transportation toys. So it's like, you can take it different ways, like keep moving people or keep moving people. Anyway, so it's kind of fun to play with that, I think.
Oh, that's great. Thank you so much. Yeah, does anybody else have any questions for Stephanie before we move on? I think we have one more thing to talk about before we.
I'm out. Thank you
Okay.
very much.
Thank you so much, Stephanie. Amazing. All right. And yeah, with that, move on to our last agenda item, which will turn over to Cassandra. She's going to give us some staff updates and then we can adjourn.
Madam Chair and Commissioners, I did a memo this time to try to cover all of the sort of staff updates that I could think of. So hopefully you guys got a chance to check that out and read that over. So maybe just a couple highlights. I think we fully covered a lot of the public art things lately, but the Laurel Rouse mural at Home Court, planning on installing that with her tomorrow. And then the show that's up right now, the West Ada School District show, is amazing. Check it out. We had about 70 people for the opening. The upcoming show is the Bosco show. We're working on some great posters for that look a little different. Concerts on Broadway are coming up. I have the several sponsors lined up this year. And if there's any questions, look over the memo, but I wanted to get you all out since we had two kind of long presentations. Don't want to keep you for like a 2-hour meeting. So let me know if you have any questions, anything.
Yeah, does anybody have anything online? Okay. Okay. I think we're good. Thank you, Cassandra. Yeah, so the next meeting will be on June 12th, 2025. Thank you guys. This was a great meeting. I feel like it was very informational, learned a lot. Yeah, do we have anybody who wants to motion for adjournment?
Madam Chair, so moved.
Great. Lizzie Taylor motions. Do we have a second?
Madam Chair, I'll second.
All right, Patrick O'Leary seconds. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, meeting adjourned. Thank you guys.
And happy birthday to Sayun.
Oh, happy